Joining me now, attorney Cleta Mitchell, who represented Catherine Engelbrecht along with a host of others targeted by the IRS. For purposes of full disclosure, Cleta also used to represent me during my days in Congress in matters of campaign law. And Cleta, we thank you for Skyping in from Washington today.
Nice to be here.
So, any surprise that the IRS may have sent thousands of tax filings to this White House?
Well, no, of course I'm not surprised about that. I'm surprised that it's taken so long to try to get the truth of the information to the American people. This really began, by the way, with an incident that occurred in 2010, if you can believe that. It goes back that far, in which the White House economic advisor, Gene Sperling, on a call with reporters, attacked Koch Industries and released information that was highly proprietary and confidential and would only have been known to him if it had come from the IRS, because certainly the company was not releasing any of that kind of information. And so a number of people began to inquire as to how he knew about this, how he knew what their tax structure was. And Cause of Action, which is a watchdog organization in Washington, has done a lot of Freedom of Information Act requests to the IRS and Treasury and many other agencies, not just the IRS, and sued the Department of Treasury and the IRS a couple of years ago because they could not get any answers to their FOIA requests. And a judge ruled against the IRS and Treasury just a couple of months ago and said, no, the Treasury and IRS departments must answer the questions and must turn over the documents. What they were asking is for any taxpayer records that were shared with the White House, documentation about those and about those transmissions. And the IRS and Treasury said, no, that's protected, that's confidential. Now, mind you, here's what they're saying. We can share it with the White House, but it's confidential and proprietary, so we are not required to turn it over under a FOIA request. And the judge ruled against them. So now we are starting to find out. And in a letter last week to Cause of Action, the Department of Justice attorney said, could we have an extra 2 weeks? We've identified over 2,500 documents that went between the White House and between the IRS and the White House, and we have to go through all of those to make sure that we redact any proprietary information. So that's what this is all about, and we'll see what they've come up with. They asked until December 15th to turn all of that over. Let's see what they do.
About 1:15 remains in this segment, Cleta. So the response of the IRS attorneys, are they basically going into a four corners stall to do anything they can possibly do to avert any type of action here?
Well, here's what they do. Yes, of course that's what they're doing. I've got 2 FOIA appeals going with the IRS right now, plus FOIA requests. And first of all, they refuse to answer within 30 days, which the law requires them to do. And then if they finally do get it, if you ask them again, then they may say, we don't have anything. Then if you sue them, you find out, oh my gosh, they have thousands of pages of documents after they said they didn't have anything. And then in the case, one of my cases, we've sued them, and this is the same thing that's happening here. They provide redacted or completely blank pages. So,
wow, so much for the most transparent administration in history. Speaking of that, we got to step aside for a second, Cleta. Want you to come back. We're going to talk more about the political ramifications, the constitutional ramifications of what is going on with the Internal Revenue Service. There's more straight ahead. Stick with us here on America's Forum. Let's continue our conversation with Washington attorney Cleta Mitchell, who has been trying to defend clients who are conservatives and apparently were targeted for audits by the IRS. So, Cleta, we hear the president. Does he have plausible deniability in this? I mean, this just seems to be, yes, admittedly as a partisan and a former member of Congress, kind of like that old line in The Untouchables, that's the Chicago way. I mean, going after your political opponents. Are we supposed to believe that he had no involvement in this whatsoever?
Well, look, I mean, the buck stops at his desk whether he likes it or not. It's his administration. It's his attorney general. It's his chief counsel at the IRS. It's his IRS commissioner. It's his Treasury secretary. You know, go down the list. It's his White House general counsel. It's his Valerie Jarrett. I mean, so I don't actually care whether he's sitting there reading those things. He's, you know, the fact of the matter is he's appointed a lot of people, and he is the one who sets the tone of lawlessness and disregard of constitutional structure and framework and constitutional rights of the American people. So yeah, he's responsible. I don't care whether he sat and went through every one of those documents or not. I don't care whether he ordered it or not. I guarantee you that there are people in the White House who knew what was going on, who were culpable, and the President of the United States traveled around the country in 2010 and demanded that the IRS and others do something to silence conservative groups because they did not like the criticism of Obamacare and the efforts that the grassroots citizens had made when they rose up in the Tea Party movement and said, we're not going to sit by and watch our country be destroyed. And his goal was to shut them up and sit them down. And that's what he set about to do. And I believe that he did it, and he did it overtly and through other people. And he was not very subtle about it. The problem is in America, which is why I love Newsmax and Newsmax TV, because we have what we have. I refuse to call those NBC, ABC, CBS the mainstream media. They're out of the mainstream. They're not mainstream. They are like the state-owned media. They might as well be in Venezuela. And the New York Times and the Washington Post and the left-wing national media give this president a complete pass on all of his violation of constitutional rights, including the violation of constitutional rights of reporters and journalists. So they let him go around and say all these things, and he is responsible. And with people in the White House, I think that we will find that there were communications with people in the White House. We know that there are at least 2,500 communications between the IRS and the White House with documents that are responsive to this FOIA request. We know that. The Justice Department's already told us that.
And with the 2 minutes that remains, I just need to get a historical perspective. Richard Nixon's presidency was imperiled by what? One tax return that folks in the White House got their hands on? And do I remember history correctly?
Actually, JD, it was very different. What Richard Nixon wanted was for the IRS to turn over taxpayer information of a number of people on the Nixon enemies list. The difference in that case is that the IRS refused. They said that they wouldn't do that, and they didn't do it. And yet, because he asked for it, that he was impeached and then ultimately resigned before he was convicted of the impeachment. But in this case, that's my point. The media was all over that. And this is a much worse constitutional crisis. After Watergate, Congress passed laws and has subsequently strengthened the law prohibiting the disclosure of confidential taxpayer information to anyone outside the IRS. And that includes the White House. And it was passed, that was enacted in response to the request from the Nixon White House. So what we have here is a serious constitutional crisis, in my view, which is being totally disregarded by the state-owned media. In that, can you imagine if George W. Bush, if it were revealed the IRS had 2,500 communications, written communications with people in the White House with taxpayer information? I don't think we'd be finding it not on the front page.
We will have to end it there. Cleta Mitchell, as always, we appreciate your insights on both American history and the legal system in the here and now. Look forward to visiting with you again real soon. Up next, our friend Nick Tate as America's Forum continues.